Hi, and on today's video, I'm finally going to admit that I may have finally lost my marbles. The main reason is this. So yes, that is an Apple device, and yes, I am now running an Apple iPhone 14 Pro Max as my main mobile phone device. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, I may have made the following comments before. An iPhone user, God help you, and you want to actually come to the power side of the world of mobile technology and go with Android. You don't want that nice, easy, tomey, let's just go approach. And it's probably time I ate a little bit of humble pie. So obviously describing these as my first phone or Tomy's my first phone, etc. Although true, was probably a little bit harsh because, to be honest, I was wrong. And here's why. So if you were under any illusion that maybe I was just jesting, I'm really not. There is the phone. And if I unlock it, and actually someone liked my reply. Now, why have I changed? And I'll be honest, there's a couple of reasons. Now, one, if anybody's been following this channel before, I've recently just started a new job, and part of it I do get private medical care, which gives me access to a free Apple Watch. Again, I've gone mad. But to be honest, I got to the point where I was starting to think, well, pretty much everybody who I know has an iPhone. A lot of friends and family have an iPhone. Why don't I give one a go? Now, many, many years ago when I had an iPhone, one of my previous companies, I think I had something like an iPhone 8. The thing was really square, bulky and awful. And although this is obviously quite bulky, I deliberately went for the larger version for a good reason, because I like the real estate. Now, what I've found is just on the original comparisons with my Samsung Galaxy Ultra 22 Ultra that I had, is obviously apart from the camera, which obviously the S22 blows out the water, everything else on this phone probably outperforms the Samsung. And what do I mean by that? Well, just the ease of use. I mean, one thing that's really useful with this is obviously Face ID. Now, not to be confused with obviously the way that Samsung do theirs, which is biometrics. Obviously, you can use your thumb, but if you've ever been like me and you're out in the rain, generally you'll find that thumb doesn't work because it can't register your thumb, and then you spend all your time doing it. Now, Face ID isn't also completely flawless. In some respects, it actually works quite well in low light. Now, I would have expected a lot of low light problems, but this does actually cope very well. And I imagine it's due to the sensor it's got at the front. However, where this does struggle is actually when there's too much natural light. So I was out walking the other day and I thought I'd just unlock my phone and I had the sun blaring on my face, and lo and behold, Face ID couldn't recognise me. To the point of I got so frustrated I nearly launched the phone across the road. And I don't want to be doing that. But what this does have, which is obviously unique to, or it seems to be unique to a lot of iPhones, is obviously these MagSafe type devices. So obviously it can wirelessly charge. And don't get me wrong, this may work quite well also on Samsungs, but I've never really seen these as options. Because, to be honest, how I've always charged my Samsung devices is via the cable, because they support fast charging, which is probably the one area that iPhone lack. They don't have the ability to charge at stupid speeds, but realistically, they do have a slightly better battery at the moment. We know what Apple are like. Probably in about 5 years' time, if I still own this phone, it's likely to be deliberately depreciated. But what I do like about this is when you start to buy other Apple peripherals. So, again, being slightly mad, I bought myself an iPad Pro, which I'll do a separate review on. And I also own the AirBuds Pro. Now, with the AirBuds Pro, actually setting those up was as simple as just pushing the case towards the phone, as was setting up the iPad. So from a simple point of view, just anything in their kind of Apple iOS infrastructure just seamlessly works together, to the point of I was out the other day with my son and he's just got a pair of iPods Pro, where basically he had them near my phone and my phone started to pick them up and it said, hang on, do you want to register these? Now the seamless transition between my phone and also my iPad with the iPods, yes, iBuds, whatever, is really seamless as well. And the same goes for this to be honest, the iOS infrastructure. So pretty much anything works. Now, what I have started to use, which I've never really used before, because one, I couldn't get Samsung Pay to accept the bank I'm with, or Google Pay seemed to have weird issues as well. So I am using Apple Pay. And I'll be honest, I've got to the point now that I never take my card out. I just use my phone to pay for it, which is actually really cool. But let's do a bit of a deep dive into the actual phone, because to be honest, for me as a massive advocate for Android and open source and unlocked environments, to be this wowed by a product made by Apple, which to me have always been the arch nemesis of phones, probably says a lot. So let's look into it. So here we have the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of what's new, what features I like about it, and kind of a little bit around the specs. Now, these do come in very different models. So obviously this is the Pro Max version, which has a larger screen. More on that in a moment. But both the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max basically come in different variants. Now, they have a space black, silver, gold, or deep purple. And the capacity ranges anywhere from 128 gigabytes to a full 1 terabyte. Obviously, the price drastically changes. Display wise, the standard iPhone 14 Pro comes with a 6.1 inch Super Retina XDR display with a pixel range of 2556 by 1179. And a pixel resolution of 460 ppi. The 460 ppi is consistent with both. Now the Pro Max, which is this version here, comes at the end with the XDR display, but it's 6.7 inch and it has a pixel resolution of 2796 by 1290. Now that's not where the only other changes are. You've now got this dynamic island at the top here, which is this little bubble, which you can see this lock screen in at the moment. Now, I find this really useful when you're doing stuff like calls or got music going, because basically with the always on display, which is a new feature, you can see what's actually playing in the background. The only time this dynamic island becomes a pain in the backside is when you're trying to watch a Netflix or something video where everything basically gets blocked out by that little area. Now, it is a HDR display. It does have full True Tone, with a complete max nit brightness of 2000 nits, and that's generally in an outdoor setting. Has haptic touch and also a contrast ratio of 2:1. Now, it is completely IP68 rated, so it is waterproof. However, it is generally down to around 6 or so meters for 30 minutes, but I wouldn't recommend going that deep with a mobile phone anyway. Now, what's actually inside it? You've got an A16 Bionic chip with 6-core CPU, which 2 of them are performance cores and 4 are efficiency cores. It's also got a 5-core GPU and also a 16-core neural engine. Now, when we go round to the back, let's just switch this round. We've got a varied series of cameras here. Now, the main one is a 48 megapixel camera. You then also got various 12 megapixel cameras, which one's an ultra wide. You've got the telephoto, which has got a quad pixel sensor, and various different zoom ranges. Now, the good thing is with this, it can actually record in some really good video formats, so it does support full 4K video. Unlike the S22 Ultra, which can go up to 8K, this tops out at 4. But let's be honest, the price of 8K at the moment is probably not that big a miss. What you can do is film up to 60 frames per second When it comes to HDR, it can record with Dolby Vision, again up to 4K at 60 frames per second. And to be honest, it actually seems quite good from a video recording perspective. So really happy with that. Now when you actually turn it round, obviously you've got the option for Face ID on these, which again I've found really useful. The only bugbear would be when in really light conditions it struggles to see me. It does come with this new safety feature, which is the emergency SOS and crash detection. So you'll get asked to set this up as you go through. Basically what that will do is if you're deemed to be in an accident, whether it be in the car or you have a fall or various other things, your phone will prompt you to actually respond at a certain time. If you don't respond, it will basically contact the emergency services or your emergency contact. Seems like a really good feature. It does able to use actually satellite, so you don't always need to have a mobile phone signal for it to work. Comes with all the standard stuff that you'd expect, so obviously supports well up to 5G. Wi-Fi wise, it does support Wi-Fi 6, which you'd fully appreciate. But yeah, it's, you know, from my point, it's actually a really good device. Now, from a battery point of view, it does come with a fairly large battery. Basically, video playback wise, it will claim up to around 23 hours or 29 hours, depending on the two models. It is a built-in lithium-ion battery. It does support MagSafe wireless charging of up to 15 watts, QI wireless charging of up to 7.5. Obviously, if you want to charge any other way, you can use a fast charge capable, but only up to a 20 watt adapter, which is a separate purchase these days. It does come with iOS 16 as standard, which is the very latest iOS version. But apart from that, I'm really impressed with the device. You know, it does seem very fluid. Performance-wise, it's run everything I've thrown at it. Not that I've really necessarily hammered it with anything, but it does seem quite responsive. You know, I mean, look at just flicking between the two there. It doesn't cause any challenges. Now, the display is nice and bright. Again, like I said, that's probably because of the nit brightness that you can possibly get on this. And it does seem to cope very well in light conditions. You do have focus modes and all those, so anybody who's quite used to Apple will understand and appreciate that there are different modes now that you can basically set on these devices where it will stop disturbing you after a certain time, and all the other kind of general settings are there. But yeah, I stand corrected on the iPhone 14s and, well, in Apple devices, period. I think they've obviously come on leaps and bounds from when I previously owned an Apple device to where they are today. So the question is, was I wrong about the iPhone? I'd say I was, and that's quite hard for me to admit. Now, the reason I was wrong is, obviously, I've always referred to this as being simple to use, but I think realistically, that's, even for a tech person, is not a bad thing, because the less time I spend playing around trying to work something out and how it does something, is probably giving me more time to do something that'd be more useful and more productive in my time. So maybe that's actually a good thing. Now, like I said, also the actual kind of whole infrastructure of iOS devices seem to seamlessly work together. I think the one bugbear I really have, and this is still a bugbear of mine, is that if we look at the bottom, I was under the understanding that all of these now were supposed to have USB-C. As you can see, that isn't USB-C, it's still a Lightning connector. Now, how they get round that, there we are. Now, how they get round that is they supply you with a Lightning to USB-C cable in the box. But is that still not a step far enough? When you compare it to the iPad Pro, which does come with a USB-C adapter, why couldn't they do that on the phone? I think that's my main big bugbear with Apple, is they do lock a lot of their peripherals around their own infrastructure. So the Lightning cable is obviously a very Apple proprietary device. Whereas obviously USB-C is more readily used because it's used in standard IT, it's definitely used in Macs, it's used in Thunderbolt technology. You're starting to see it more and more on other devices, and even my camera's got a USB-C connection. So for the data transfer rates, etc., it makes sense to standardize. So that's just one bugbear I've got about this, and maybe on the next iPhone they'll correct this. I did believe they were supposed to have corrected it by now, but that's probably their workaround. What else don't I like? Well, apart from a little bit of an awkward setup process, because obviously I've had Apple devices in the past, it starts to try and remember stuff, it tries to put it through. I think the biggest annoyance I had was actually moving from Android to iOS, because the problem is stuff like my security authenticators couldn't seamlessly transpose. But that works both ways, so realistically they're both to blame for this. There's no easy transition from an iOS device to an Android, and vice versa from Android to iOS. That being said, I actually really like it. I'm afraid to admit. It's actually done a really good job. The sound quality also seems a little bit better than my S22 Ultra. And I know some of my friends who are still massive Android fans are probably thinking, Christ, Andy, you really have lost the plot. Give it a go. It's actually quite surprising. Anyway, that's enough on the Galaxy S22. And you'll probably see what I deliberately done there. It is an iPhone. It's not an S22. It's going to take me a while to come to terms with it, and I'm going to have to admit to both my uncle and my brother that they were right for a change. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. So if you like this video, you know what to do. And don't get me wrong, this unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, won't be the last Apple device I review on this channel. So stay tuned.